Well, all right. My name is Travis Lang. I am the Transportation Program Specialist for TransManage and Choose Your Way Bellevue. Choose Your Way Bellevue is Bellevue's one-stop shop for all things transportation. Some employer program offerings that we offer right now. We do have free one-on-one commute consultations that we offer. And right now we also have a really cool employer/property manager mini grant program. And that's designed to help enhance any commute program aspects that you're trying to enhance, or if you're trying to start something like a bike share program or getting ORCA cards, that money can be used for that as well. Also on this call today, we have the Executive Director for the Greater Redmond TMA, Kirk Hovenkotter. Kirk, if you want to give a quick little briefing on Greater Redmond TMA.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirk. I'm the Director of the Greater Redmond Transportation Management Association. I know a few of you, but if you don't know our organization, we are the advocate for better biking, walking, and transit in Redmond. Our 30-plus member organizations collectively represent about 100,000 people who come to Redmond every single day, well, normally. But yeah, and so we are transportation consultants and transportation experts for our member organizations, helping them figure out investments to make it their work sites, as well as we convene events similar to these that bring together our members with agency staff and elected officials in Redmond, as well as we're advocates on our members' behalf. And that's critical right now because we only have about a third of Redmond employees commuting into work every day, and a number of those are taking transit. And it's critical for us right now to make sure that our transit agencies like Metro get the emergency relief that they need in the next federal bill. So we are advocating and pushing on our congressional delegation, Susan Del Bene, Patty Murray, and Maria Cantwell, to make sure that Metro gets the emergency funding it needs to continue to be there and continue to move Redmond and power our economy. So excited to hear from them today and hear what questions everyone has and kick off a great discussion. So I'll pitch it back to you, Travis.
Thanks, Kirk. Yeah, so we're really excited to have our 4 presenters from King County Metro. Leading us off from Health and Safety will be Sean Hawks, the Communication Manager over at King County Metro. After that, we will have Grace Carlson, the Service Planning Department for East King County team. Following Grace, we have Quiana Thomas, who is the Rideshare Service Representative, to answer any questions you may have there. And then finally, we have Rocco Devito, who's the Customer Relationship Manager for the Business and Marketing Development team. Real quick, last housekeeping, we'll get started. After each presenter, we will be taking questions and we'll be taking them in the chat. So if you have any questions at all through any presenter, go ahead and type it in the chat and we'll go ahead and address it at the end of their presentation. There'll also be some time at the end for other questions you may have. So that being said, we're gonna go ahead and kick it off to Sean Hawks, the Communication Manager. We'll get going. Sean?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone's time today. And we could go to the next slide. I'm really excited to talk today sort of about where we've been over the course of the last, since kind of February or March, what our response has been like, and then as we look forward to recovery and rebuilding. So what that looks like both operationally, but also with regard to our communications to all of our customers. And again, want to thank this group for their support of transit, especially at this time, but long before COVID as well. So if you think about the values of Metro, there are really 3, and it's safety, equity, and sustainability. And these are values we've had long before COVID. We were really proud to move more than 400,000 customers every single day on our system to provide accessible, affordable transit, particularly to communities of greatest need. And also to really lead the way in combating climate change and realizing the really key role of transit in building healthy communities. So those were our values before Metro. And then if you go to the next slide, I want to show sort of how those also led our response. So insofar as safety, that has always been just our foremost concern. We transitioned very, very quickly to daily disinfection of all of our vehicles, physical distancing on coaches, passenger limits, et cetera, and taking a lot of steps also to support and protect our employees. We also realized that although ridership has dropped, it's down to about 35% of where it was a year ago today, That's not true for everybody. We have a lot of customers who are essential workers or who take essential trips, and they really count on transit for medicine, groceries, and other needs. So whereas some agencies around the country actually took a pause, we realized we couldn't skip a day. So we had to make a lot of transitions with regard to safety, but also keep a really sustainable network up. And furthermore, monitoring where we still needed to bring back service, where we weren't seeing the types of reductions in certain communities that we saw agency-wide. And then thirdly, sustainability remains a real key priority for us. And that hasn't changed. We realize that even though we're in a tough budget situation now, the climate crisis isn't going anywhere. And we really continue to plan around making a real difference with battery electric and just transit writ large. So I've sort of talked about like a status quo and a response, and then those same values really will guide our recovery with everything that we plan moving forward. And if we go to the next slide, everything we do at Metro is really based around our customers. So I want to sort of look ahead, and although none of us know the exact timeline of our recovery, we know how important transit will be. So not just to our aggregate economic growth, but to ensuring that is equitable. So we know that without transit, basically all of the benefits I just shared, the brunt of those will be felt by communities of greatest need. So whether that is air quality, but also those who cannot afford a single occupancy vehicle. So with that in mind, we know how critical it is to spread the really important work and really fast transitions of transit to COVID, and how those continue to happen, guided by our experts in public health, Seattle and King County, the CDC, and elsewhere. So if we take a step forward, so I want to share sort of the genesis of a communications campaign and a marketing effort that we're going to be pushing out in the weeks ahead. And this was really informed by where our passengers are today, their sort of level of nervousness or anxiety. And this is both among customers who have been away from transit, who may have not stepped onto a bus or a water taxi since March, but also those still using our system, but may have concerns about their safety, even if they feel like they don't currently have a choice. We also knew that this was a campaign that we needed to develop, realizing that all of the kind of frenetic media environment that we have right now is only going to get crazier as we get closer and closer to a presidential election. And if you take one more step, I also just want to speak to some APTA research that we, again, kind of built our campaign around. Some of the key things that I'll pull out, if we could go one more slide forward. First of all, passengers want to know two things. They want to know both what the transit agencies are doing, and that they're leading in this effort, and to get a lot of detail, even down to specifics of cleaning protocols. And then the second thing they want to know is the prescriptive guidance for them as a passenger and for other customers too. So in essence, they want sort of a customer's expectations of everything from mask wearing to physical distancing to readying and planning a trip. And I included, just for your sort of knowledge too, on the right-hand side, these were some sort of a word cloud of some of the best testing phrases. So with all this in mind, again, we're excited in a couple weeks to be launching a marketing and communications campaign that lays out, what we're doing at Metro in the short term and what we've already done and will continue to do, how passengers should plan their trip and use our system safely and effectively, and also begin to share the way we're thinking about and planning our recovery. So our goal is for Metro and our transit network writ large across our region to emerge stronger and even more committed to those values and goals as ever. And I want to share just a preview of some of the specifics. So, we try to always do things in a way that makes sense regardless of language, and they're quickly glanceable. So this is just a quick preview of some of the things that Metro is doing. We are also looking at rolling out some health partitions. You'll see that in the lower right. So these are plexiglass it's kind of barriers between the driver and boarding customers. So prior to us going back to fares, we'll have those in place to protect both our operators and our boarding customers. We're also doing a lot of work to send more buses for busy routes, as we have done. So we've actually had a lot of learnings in the context of the last, since March, about how to be more responsive to ensure we're kind of moving more people with fewer buses when we need to. And also a lot of the work with regard to our air filtration, masks, et cetera. And then if we go to the next slide, these are sort of the expectations for what riders should be doing. So I shared a number of these before, but these become even more important when we think about the September service change. So knowing both the changes across our system and some of the exciting evolutions that are taking place, but also monitoring as we are still at 85% of our existing schedule, just to ensure that your trip is there, that it's on time. And in a time of passenger limits, to try to add in when you can a little extra time in case your first bus or other vehicle maybe I won't say crowded because there's not many people, but we have 18 as a limit on a 60-person bus, for example. So in some cases, if it was at capacity, you may need to wait for the next bus. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to share a few of the ways you'll see this campaign. So you'll obviously see it through our social media channels. We're also hoping to do some media events to spread awareness across our community writ large. We're doing a lot of work, including in language, with a number of outlets throughout the region. And also, I can't underestimate how important our passport program is to us, so that we're providing information both through Metro branded communications channels, but also giving employers and organizations the content, the materials, the visual assets, the videos that they can provide to their employees, because we're hearing how important that is from our many customers in that field. So again, really excited, and I can't promise that the launch of the campaign will be quite as exciting as the Kraken, but we'll do our best. And again, really appreciate the chance to talk with you today, and happy to take any questions any of you may have.
Thanks for that, Sean. Let's take a look at the chat. Doesn't look like we have any questions for you here, Sean, but greatly appreciate you spending the time and educating all of us on what's going on. So appreciate you. Again, if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat and we'll address them after each presenter. So next up though, we do have, very excited to have Grace Carlson here from the Service Planning Department to speak on what's going on there. So Grace, take it away.
So if I ask people to raise their hands, like using the Zoom feature, will you be able to tell me how many hands you see raised?
I don't think I will be able to. It's a great question. I've never tried that before, actually.
Okay, let's just do a little, because I like interactive. So I'm curious how many people on the call today have used public transit since March. Yeah, if you go to participants, you'll see a little raise your hand. If you click on the participants at the bottom of your screen, you'll see in there that you can raise your hand that way. Okay, so let's see how many. Okay, one, I can't, oh, I see here. Okay, two. Okay, so most of the people on the call, except for two and myself, have not. Now you can click the raise your hand button and your hand will go down. Most of you have not used public transportation since the first part of March, which is totally understandable. But I just was curious about that. So ever since this happened, Metro has been responding and reacting in real time. As Sean mentioned, it's been very eye-opening to see where ridership has held steady throughout this period of time, and where we've seen precipitous declines in ridership. And not trying to pick on any geographic area. I'm an Eastside service planner. I love the Eastside, but the Eastside is an area where there's quite a bit of commuting across the lake and even north and south to get to and from jobs. And with most people in professional industries working from home, we see ridership declines, coming from and to the Eastside. let's see, what, can you go back to that slide right before this one? Yeah, thank you. So now that we are in phase 2 in King County, we have seen, like, at the height of ridership decline, we were at about 25% of the riders using the service, any of our services, in April compared to what the ridership had looked like in February. But now that we are in phase 2, and restaurants and some other service industries have begun to open up, we've seen our ridership begin to change a little bit. So now we're seeing about 2/3 of our, we're down about 2/3 of our riders. So it's been holding steady this summer at around 35% of active ridership. But we continue to respond to needs and demands. And in some cases where a bus might be overcrowded, Sean mentioned that if you were waiting for a bus and it had to pass you by because it was at a safe capacity for social distancing, when we monitor those, or they're called pass-ups. And when we see pass-ups happening in a certain time period with a certain route, we actually will send out shadow buses so people don't have to wait as long for the next bus. Next slide, please. So in this fall service change, we will see that we will restore our service to about 85% of what it was in February of this year. And as you might imagine, peak commuting trips will probably be some of the last that we will see restored to the network. Our primary focus is on all-day routes where we're seeing, as I said, ridership staying steady or beginning to grow a little bit even, and keeping span of service in place. Next slide, please. Oh, it's a very good question, Rachel. I'll get to it in just a moment. So I wanted to just take a really quick look ahead. I mentioned that as we begin to restore service back, we will look at maintaining span of service. So if a route, if it starts at 5 o'clock in the morning and it runs until midnight, if we're going to restore that route, we're trying to make sure that we restore it to that span of service. But in order to save costs, which we have financial constraints right now, as you know, most public agencies do, instead of, if it had 15-minute headways, it might have 20-minute headways or 30-minute headways in order to provide service throughout that, provide buses throughout that span of service. Forums such as this one are important for us to hear feedback from all of our customers, and particularly from our large employers, about when they expect to see workforce commuting patterns begin to resume. Then the new network will have some additional restoration of service, but because right now Seattle Transportation Benefit District is a tax that's collected that purchases and enhances service within the city of Seattle limits, that tax is expected to sunset at the end of the year and revenue will not be collected. So there will be some reductions in service to those routes in Seattle in March that would no longer benefit from that. If you're following the news, you may be aware that the city of Seattle is planning to put a new transportation benefit initiative on the ballot in November, and we just have to wait and see, what happens with that and whether that makes any adjustments happen for the 2021 service within the city of Seattle. In September, what will happen is there will be a little bit more service that's going to be restored, and then we will consider that to be a fully stabilized network at that point. And there's going to be some opportunities for folks to hear more about what some of those conceptual plans look like, and also have an opportunity to have a say. And we're going to be doing doing some virtual engagement and outreach throughout the month of October. So stay tuned to the TransManage portal and the Greater Redmond TMA portal, and to your local jurisdiction staff and partners to know where and how you can get involved and hear what the news is. So with that concludes my part of the presentation. And I see that there's a question from Rachel about what we're doing to actively address widespread racial tension in the county, and specifically in the King County Metro workplace. Well, Rachel, it's an excellent question, and certainly, as you saw from my last bullet on the last slide, when we say that we're interested in maintaining and investing in service where needs are greatest, that is really a value and a priority from our executive for the county, all throughout our departments, including the Department of Metro Transit. So we will be continuing to increase and invest service in particularly in areas of the county where you see high concentrations of equity populations. Within our workplace, you know, I'm a service planner and I work closely with operators, but operators and maintenance folks are out in the field, and they have to go in to those physical conditions every day. And so we have there's lots of ways that we can have high touch, even though we're not physically, you know, we're remotely working right now. And there's every week, there's at least one, if not 2 or 3 opportunities where we gather in virtual rooms like this one and talk about some of the challenges and some of the trade-offs and some of the benefits, and making sure that our frontline employees are able to stay safe and healthy. I hope that answers your question at least a little bit, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
All right, well, thank you, Grace. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, but we'll continue to monitor the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for telling us what's going on with service planning. Next up, really excited, we have Quiana Thomas from Rideshare Services, and she's going to talk about everything that's going on there and educate us there. So without further ado, Quiana, take it away.
Quiana, you're muted.
I just realized that. Thanks, Grace. Thank you. So I'm with King County Vanpool. We are going to talk about the changes that we made for Vanpool, Vanshare and Vanpool. Thank you. Working with the partners to understand the new commute. So for Vanshare and Vanpool, just to recap, it's basically a group, typically a group of 5 working together for a better and safer, calming, less stressed commute. They live and work in the same community, and we cover the fare. Well, the monthly fare, excuse me. We do not cover the fare. The fare has been suspended up through September, but the fare will include your gas, maintenance, and insurance. The Vanshare, the difference of the Vanshare is it's a first and last mile connection. So you're going to use another form of transit, public transportation, excuse me. We have temporarily reduced the, we temporarily reduced our minimum ridership to 2 participants. That is to help with the social distancing. If you choose, or if the groups choose, it's okay. It's okay. Sorry, it keeps popping up. If you choose to have more participants in your group, forming a new van or existing vans, you're welcome to do so. Next slide. And so if you're starting a new van or in an existing van, we have the communications that we are following are going to be the public health guidelines. So we would encourage you to not go to work with a fever or any symptoms for sicknesses, using face coverings in the van pool, regularly sanitizing the van, especially highly touched areas, which are the door handle, steering wheel, just high traffic areas, including cleaning the van daily. We also are offering a no contact picking up the Vanpool, dropping off the Vanpool, and maintenance. The flexibility options for the commutes you can reduce your schedule, your work schedule, because a lot of us are working from home. So if you are in the Vanpool 3 days a week, it's more than okay. But you can also split your commute or split your time in the van. You can work 2 days a week home, 2 days a week in the Vanpool. You can also combine your commute with a bike. We include a bike rack we provide a bike rack at Fast. So you can combine a bike ride, riding the bus, or just staying at home and ride your bike and riding the Vanpool back. So there's a ton of flexibility in that. We also have emergency Vanpool for essential workers that have been impacted by transit changes. And we have pretty much a click of the button way of starting a new Vanpool. You can do the survey or do the registration and do the required questions and then attach your applications. And then you'll be assigned a formations rep. They'll contact you and you can pretty much start a Vanpool in no time. That concludes me. Thank you. Any questions? Can you elaborate more on the emergency Vanpool and how it works? So it's the same requirement. What was happening was a lot of people were staying at home. And so since they were staying at home, let's say it was 3 people were staying at home, so then the van could not run. So emergency Vanpool was free and it was requiring the 2 people, still same requirements, living in the same community, going to the same work location, not the exact same, but similar work location. So the requirements have been reduced. We'll call that the emergency Vanpool. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. Valerie. That's it for me. Any other questions?
All right, we can always answer in the chat going forward. So thanks, Quiana. Thanks for explaining what's going on over at Rideshare.
Absolutely, thank you.
And now we're going to move on. We have Rocco Devito, the Customer Relationship Manager. He's going to talk about some business and market development that's going on over at King County Metro. So I'll go ahead and throw it over to Rocco.
Hello. Yeah, can you just go to the next slide? My one slide. All right. So if I haven't met you all, I'm Rocco. I'm most likely your passport and CTR rep for the East King County. What I wanted to talk to you today is just kind of a few things we're doing around business passport that affects a lot of businesses in the area. At this time, we've kind of changed some of our policies. We know a lot of businesses are going through a time with low ridership and might be looking into short-term suspensions of passes. That is something we're doing, which we have not typically done in the past, which is kind of shutting down accounts for a short amount of time and then restarting with a new contract at a later date so that folks can use a smaller program in the meantime. Some folks have also shifted to ORCA Choice for the shorter long term, just to have a little bit more flexibility in covering folks who need to be covered during this time when a lot of folks are working from home. The other big change coming up in September is our normal price change for ORCA Passport. As part of that, renewal prices are going down because a lot of those area passports are based on the ridership of that area. And so in most cases, we're showing price reductions close around 40 or more %, which is helping a lot of people keep their programs. And so happy to talk with folks individually about that. A lot of folks also have questions about the credits that we've been issuing. During this time where we are fare free, we want to make sure that we're treating all of our businesses equitably and because ridership is so low and because of the fare free periods that a lot of the transit agencies went through, we are crediting folks for that time we are fare free. You can contact myself or a representative at King County, and we'd be more than happy to go over your account and answer any questions that you have. I've put up my email so that if you have a specific question, please feel free to reach out. At this time, we will continue to work through any future fare-free periods with credits on a month-to-month basis, whenever they might be, they might occur. In addition, I would say, if you are active with your commute trip reduction program, feel free to reach out. I know I've talked to a few companies about kind of transit benefits and what they can do to be more flexible these days. And we are here to help you come up with strategies and any resources where we can, both myself and the local jurisdictions that you're in. We're more than happy to help through this interesting and difficult time. With that, I'll take any questions you might have on business programs, or we can kind of open it up to general questions.
All right, thank you, Rocco. Keep monitoring the chat for another minute while we close out. Share. All right. Well, I'll keep monitoring the chat, but if nobody does have any questions, first I want to just thank all the presenters that you heard from today. Kirk, Sean, Grace, Quiana, Rocco. Thanks for taking the time to educate everyone here on what's going on with your organization. Oh, we do have a question here for Rocco.
Yes, no problem. So the question is, can I speak to the new invoicing process for 2021 and beyond? For that would be based on the type of contract. Folks that are on a area passport account, those folks, it'll be traditional pricing, the same, I said not traditional pricing, but the same renewal process that we've gone through every year. With new renewal rates. I believe in this particular context, there is a new program for larger custom accounts, and I'd be more than happy to have a discussion with you on that and connect you with your specific rep, because Microsoft has a specific one. So happy to help with that.
All right. Well, again, I just wanted to thank all our presenters for taking the time and educating everyone here on what's going on with the organization and with King County Metro. And I want to thank all the attendees as well. Hopefully you're able to learn something, take it back to your business, and hopefully it'll just be educational for you guys. We will send out the slide deck as well as the contact information from everyone you heard today. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and reach out to them.
I will put into the chat, and maybe you could send this out also. We have a section of our website that talks about the reduced service that's currently in place, and this website will be updated probably shortly after Labor Day. The service changes will go into effect on September 19th. So look to this link just a little after Labor Day and check it to find out what routes are currently suspended that will be restored in September, and also what kind of frequencies and timetables you can expect for your favorite routes in September.
Great, thanks, Grace.
Yeah. Oh, Valerie, I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Question is, I see that, King County Metro is having this marketing campaign laid out, and I've seen in a couple of employer circles just all over the nation, and TDM is a challenge is how to encourage people to come back to transit and to vanpooling, how to message that. Do you guys have plans to roll out some sort of marketing materials or support directly for employers that could help us out with some of that messaging?
Valerie, I think that Sean had to step away. So he would be the person who's directly responsible for that and could speak to it. But yes, within the next few weeks, the campaign will start rolling out in a public way. And then that's generally followed shortly thereafter with some tailored messaging that would be customized for you to share with your workforce. And Rocco, I'm sure you could also probably be a very helpful resource and liaison on that as well.
Yeah, I can say we do have a member of our team on that kind of internal group that's working on those materials. I've seen some drafts. We do anticipate that we'll get those when they're complete, and we'd certainly share it through our kind of business listserv and as well through the CTR. We'll send out emails for that.
And just
That'd be
for like
greatly
a
appreciated.
heads up, Valerie, we're aiming to have this information available before the September service change. So it just within the next few weeks, you should be starting to see some things roll out both publicly and individually.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to share one concern that I've heard from some of our members, employees, around the accuracy of real-time arrival data on the apps they rely on. And I'm curious if that has been an issue that's come up for Metro staff. And yeah.
Are you pointing at me, Grace? I will say I can't say anything officially as far as the apps are concerned. As a rider, I can share my experience. My route is both busy and my section is fast, and so we get a lot of folks, a lot of buses coming at the different times than you'd expect. Just as a feasibility and logistical point, a lot of times those buses update every 90 seconds to 3 minutes apart. And the other thing, just like when you are in a valley and your cell phone's not working in those certain areas, there are times where those buses are in areas that they are not pinging off the tower, and it can take some minutes to update. So you kind of, I think as a bus rider, will feel when you know those spots exist. And I would just recommend going out to a bus a couple extra minutes before you'd normally head out to the bus, just in case they are running a little early. I find personally my buses ends up being about 2 or 3 minutes ahead, so a lot of the time. And so just building that into your schedule can be helpful in kind of making sure we catch the buses on time.
And just one other follow-up question. What information or questions do you want to hear from major employers about to help inform your decisions going forward? I saw that you're looking at responses from employers for your 2021 service planning.
So right now, service planners throughout the county, we're looking at where there are opportunities for service restoration in March, and then what service would be restored to that stable network level that I talked about next September. We're doing that planning work right now. We're going to be going out with public engagement in October, and we'll be talking basically in higher concepts. It won't be so much like, if you had to choose between this route or that route, which do you feel is more strongly needed to stay in place? We have the things that factor into the cost of the service is the span of service, like when the buses start running at 5 o'clock in the morning and run until midnight, span of service, the frequency, and the coverage, how far a route has to run. So we're going to be going out to the public in October, and I think the large employers that are represented on this call would be very key stakeholder audiences for us, where we would be talking about how we've observed ridership changes through the COVID period, and where we feel like we need to maintain and even expand service in certain areas. But we'll be asking people conceptually, if you had to have a trade-off of reduced span of service or frequency in this area, in the Eastside, for example, so that maybe the routes would start a little bit later in the morning and end running a little bit earlier in the evening, versus having 7-minute frequency in the peak. We'll be talking with the public, with employers and the general public about those kinds of trade-offs to help us better understand the needs and priorities in geographically specific areas, so that will further inform our final network concepts that would be in place next September. And that's going to be happening throughout the month of October, but I don't have dates or times just yet. We'll be announcing those next month.
Thanks for that, Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And Grace, looks like we have a question in the chat for you as well.
Well, this is a great question, because particularly on the east side, there's such a symbiotic relationship of the network between Sound Transit and Metro that we already, planners from both agencies are already working together about some very high level concepts that we want to make sure that in a need to contain costs, that one agency doesn't inadvertently create a gap that the other agency isn't prepared to fill one way or the other. And so I think in particular, when we do the East Side engagement, you will be seeing Metro and Sound Transit coming out in a more of a united effort. But obviously, you know, we're with Northlink opening next September, and then Federal Way Link opening a couple of years after that. It'll be important for both agencies to tackle these needs and priorities that we hear from the community in some sort of a joint unified effort. So yes, to answer, it's a long story to answer your question, we will be most likely, at least on the east side, coming out together. There may be some staggered engagement in the South and Seattle and North Seattle areas, but that's still to be determined.
They don't stop pulling each other's hair and giving each
I think somebody's asking a question, but I can't quite hear them.
another paid timeout.
Maybe they're having a sideline conversation.
All right.
One point, just a practical piece of advice that I believe we've talked about in different presentations. We are seeing, you know, traditionally we have, you know, pretty high peaks in our service. Peaks are getting less peaky these days. One practical thing for employees, people who are going into work, being able to be flexible when someone can go into work, and traveling midday or a little earlier, a little later can help make sure that, you know, folks are getting on buses when they're the less crowded. So if folks are getting passed up, or you know, that's possible for them to go in, you know, in the middle of the day, that can be a little easier for folks and put them at ease when traveling on transportation if they have to.
Great. Well, we'll go ahead and stay on the presenters for another minute or so. In case anyone does have any outstanding questions, you can go ahead and hang tight. But if not, if you don't have any other questions, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you're able to learn something and take it back to your workplace. And we'll see you next time. So thanks all.